Welcome to Forensic Friday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Today's video will be featuring the BH Cosmetics 90s Dance Remix palette. I did the 80s palette last week, so I only thought it would be fitting if I did the 90s palette this week. Just like the 80s palette, this palette is full of shades with names from the 90s, like 90s songs. The packaging on this palette is giving me a very much Fresh Prince of Bel-Air / Living Singles, and maybe even Saved by the Bell vibes. All the other items I'm using in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I'm in no way, shape, or form a professional makeup artist, beauty guru, MUA, makeup student, a makeup extravaganza. It's the same-ish. Nor am I any sort of forensic pathologist, medical examiner, nothing in criminal law. Pretty much I'm just the average girl at home like you, playing in makeup and talking about true crime. So if you love true crime and makeup, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future episodes. And let's get into today's case. This all takes place in Tampa, Florida on June 20th. So this all takes place in Tampa, Florida on June 4th, 1989, when the bodies of 3 unidentified women were found floating in Tampa Bay. You guys see that? You see how important I am? The Navy, the Air Force came out because they like me that much, you know. They wanted to give me recognition for filming this video. All 3 bodies were naked from the waist down. They had been bound and tied to 30-pound concrete blocks with yellow rope. They also had duct tape on their mouths. The first question posing investigators was the identity of the 3 women. They found no form of identification on them. Although the bodies were tied to these 30-pound concrete blocks, decomposition had already started to set in, and it created a gas that lifted the bodies and the concretes to the surface. Now, the medical examiners estimated that the bodies had been in the water for at least 3 days. Their autopsy reports revealed water in their lungs, indicating they were still very much alive when they drowned. They were trying to find out where the victims' bodies had been placed in the water, so they contacted the University of South Florida to analyze the currents for that period of time. I love to make myself look like the Cowardly Lion every time I do my makeup. And they told the police that based on their test, they felt that the women had been placed there from the center of the bay, perhaps from a boat, but definitely not from like a bridge or a shoreline. Soon, news got out through media about the 3 women. And a local hotel owner said that a woman and her 2 daughters had checked into his hotel just 3 days earlier. But he told police that he hadn't seen them since. Now, when police searched their hotel room, all of their belongings were there, unpacked. There were suitcases opened up. It wasn't completely unpacked, but it was like, you know how when you first get to, you know, your vacation destination, before you completely take out all your stuff, you're like, okay, before I unpack, let's just go and, you know, get some brunch or something, or you just decide to, you know, walk around. And so you open like one part of your suitcase, but you don't unpack the full thing. I don't know, that might just be me because I'm a serial procrastinator. But that's pretty much how this was. The scene was, their suitcases were open but they weren't unpacked, and there were like bags still sitting around. The beds also were made and like untouched, and they also noticed that the towels were dry. None of them were wet or used, and they all were in perfect condition as well. They were untouched. It also appeared as though no one had entered or left the room during that time, so I mean, what the hell? Now, investigators found that the room was registered to a Joan Rogers and her 2 daughters, Michelle and Christe Rogers. Police contacted her husband, Hal, who at the time worked as a dairy farmer in Ohio, and they were able to get in contact with him through the local sheriff in town. Dental records confirmed Hal's worst nightmare. The victims were 36-year-old Joan Rogers, 17-year-old Michelle, and 14-year-old Christe. So the fact that there was water still in their lungs, like I said earlier, that meant that they were still alive when they were thrown overboard. Investigators described the way that they were killed as execution style. So this really hit a personal spot with them, and it wasn't just a murder to them. This was like an execution. Police were speculating, like, why would he cover their mouths but leave their eyes uncovered? And everyone was speculating about the 3 women's deaths. Some believe that the perpetrator did not blindfold the women because he wanted each one of them to see what he had did to the other one before he threw them overboard. And that is some sick-ish right there. He wanted to see the horror on each one of their faces. I mean, people were really upset about this in the Tampa Bay area. They were like, what kind of monster is this? You know, this is serious. But investigators couldn't figure out who would want to murder 3 women and dump their bodies in Tampa Bay. 3 women? I'm starting to think it was multiple people. So investigators took a closer look to Joan and the 2 girls' backgrounds. In May of 1989, Joan and her 2 daughters left Ohio to Tampa, Florida for vacation. Now, this was the family's first time ever leaving Ohio. I'm just like curious why they went alone, seeing it being like their first time ever leaving the state. Definitely would have taken my husband with me, but okay. So apparently Hal, Joan's husband, stayed behind to take care of the dairy farm. So apparently on June 1st, Joan and her daughters, Joan, it's just so confusing. Anyway, Joan and her daughters got lost, and so they decided to stay an extra day in Tampa. So when looking into Hal, police found that, they didn't really find anything super suspicious about Hal right off the bat because they were running a dairy farm. So this is like a 365-day job out of a year. So for him to not go on vacation because he was running the dairy farm made sense to authorities. They thought that, okay, that makes sense. But the only thing that kind of put them off a little bit and bothered them about Hal was that after his wife and daughters didn't return, he didn't report them missing for 3 days, even though he hadn't heard anything from them and they hadn't returned. I think I would definitely report them missing or freak out. But then again, this was 1989 and they didn't have cell phones back then, so it's not like he could like text them or call them and see, you know what I mean? And they weren't responding. Maybe he thought that possibly they hadn't gotten a hold of a phone or something. That could have been the thought process. You didn't really have any direct access to people like you do now. Like now, you don't even have to call or text anyone. You can just go onto their social media and see if they posted anything, and if they haven't, you can see whether or not the person signed in or not. Okay, that might have been a little too much information. Stalker much, Sahara? I'm sorry, I mean, not everyone can see that, but I mean, if you're looking for that, if you can just see if the person has been on, if they signed in or not, you can say, okay, well, at least they signed in, so they're alive. You know what I mean? They're just not fucking answering me back. There was one other thing that really bothered the investigators as well. Hal seemed to not be displaying any sort of emotions to what was going on. Well, I would say not the typical emotions that most people would display or go through. His wife and 2 daughters were missing, and he was not responding in a way that police felt was like appropriate. He was very calm, and they described him as very cold. Actually, he was very unemotional, and so the police actually asked him about it, because they're like, look dude, like, what's going on, what's up, you don't seem, you know, too grief-stricken about what happened. And he told police, I don't have time to be emotional about it, I have to run my dairy farm. Wow, I don't know what to say about that, honestly. I don't want to be biased. Everyone handles grief in their own way. I can see like he lost one person, but he lost all 3 of them. Oh no, I don't have time to be emotional about losing my wife and 2 daughters. I'm running a dairy farm here, guys. Like, and right now you're just about interfering into my lunch break. You know what I mean? Now, according to him, he was just doing whatever he needed to do to function and nothing else. Like, he pretty much was just trying to stay functioning. And I do know there are some personality types who are like this, but I don't understand them. But I do know that there are some people that are like that, their main thing in life is just to function. Investigators tracked Hal's whereabouts for the day of the murders. Lucky for Hal, he didn't like to cook for himself. I know, same thing here, partner, pal. So he ate most of his meals at local restaurants. This gave Hal an alibi. Obviously, it was a small town. The people recognized him. They knew him. They had seen him there. The employees had seen him there. People had seen him there that day for breakfast, and then he had returned in the evening for dinner. Now, at the autopsies, the medical examiner noticed that the seawater had actually gotten rid of a lot of crucial evidence to help solve this case. Because the bodies were submerged in seawater for that length of time, it had washed away any sort of fibers or hairs or any fingerprints or DNA evidence or any essential evidence that could have linked someone to the case. It was kind of impossible for them to tell if the victims had been sexually assaulted for sure. They originally suspected that they had been, but it was really difficult to tell. They didn't really have much to go on. In fact, they had pretty much no forensic evidence to go on at all. So police was on the lookout for Joan Rogers' car, and they found her car at a boat launch. Now it's time to go into the palette. But anyway, back to the story. Now the car was located just a mile away from the hotel that the Rogers were staying at and 25 miles away from where their bodies were discovered. Inside of the car, investigators found 2 handwritten notes. On one was directions to the hotel. The second one contained directions to the boat launch. So investigators sent a sample of the document over to a forensics document examiner for analysis. So this forensic examiner found that the first note that was written on the days in notepad paper with the directions to the boat launch was that of Joan Rogers. But the other note that was written on the brochure with directions to the hotel was not that of Joan Rogers or her 2 daughters. So if it wasn't Joan Rogers' handwriting or her 2 daughters, then whose handwriting was it? The examiner noticed that the word Courtney had the letter T capitalized in the middle of the word. Now, the word Courtney was part of the hotel's address, which was very unusual because most people wouldn't capitalize a letter in the middle of a word. Because of the spacing between the letter R and the capital letter T, they found that it didn't match Joan's handwriting style at all. And they found that the letter Y was written really unusual. Now, the letter Y had been written 4 times, and each time it was written differently, just a very slight variation of the original Y, but definitely a significant difference. This note was huge for investigators. They were all over it. They were just like, look, we gotta figure out who wrote this note, because if we figure out who wrote this note, we find the killer. They also found something else really strange on that note. Next to the boat launch's address, they found the words blue and the letters WHT. So police just summarized it as the color of something, and if you're going to a launch dock, it's probably a boat, they thought. But unfortunately, they discovered that there were no boats docked at the launch because this was an area where, you know, people resided. And so you could only put your boat in the water for about a day at best. At most, you could only park your boat there for like a day. But then police got a break in the case. Thank God. When a tipster came forward with an important piece of information. They told police there was a local guy with a boat who was actually running in an unlicensed business, and he was offering tourists sunset cruises on the bay. This man's name was Jason Wilcox, and get this, you guys, he owned a blue and white boat. Surprise, surprise. When investigators performed a background check, they found that Wilcox had a criminal record. He had a criminal record and served time for aggravated assault. Sounds like our guy. And get this, you guys, he lived just 5 miles from the boat launch. When police searched his property, they did find some large concrete blocks. But of course, he denied having anything to do with the murders, and without any physical evidence to tie him to the case, police couldn't really do anything. At this point, police just wanted to get like a court order for his handwriting samples. There was no way they were going to be able to get a court order without any solid evidence to link Wilcox to the 3 women's death. Homicide investigators found that just 2 weeks before the Rogers family was murdered, there was a similar case. A Canadian tourist named Judy Blair. Judy Blair was raped while taking a sunset boat cruise on a blue and white boat. Sounds familiar? Yeah, dude. Police believe the same person that attacked her was responsible for the Rogers murders. So 7 years go by in the case, and investigators start to get creative. According to 24-year-old Judy Blair, she had gotten into a boat with a man who was to give her a tour of the bay. And once she was on the boat and they were out in the middle of the waters where no one could see them, he threatened her for sex. He told her that if she did not have sex with him, he was going to kill her. He also told her that there were sharks in the water just in case she was thinking to swim back to shore. So she starts begging him, you know, please, please don't do anything to me. I'll be quiet. I won't tell anyone. Just let me go. And then she blurts out, I'm a virgin. And whoa, did this get him excited? Allegedly, he turns to her and he's like, look, Judy, it's not worth getting murdered over a sexual assault. He was like, baby girl, it's either sexual assault or murder. Which one you want? The fact that he would even say that and offer that, like, okay, that means he definitely murdered other women before. And according to her, he had ropes on the boat, a yellow rope in particular, just like with the Rogers family murders as well. Allegedly, afterwards, he got physically ill. That's what she said. As you can imagine, investigators were wondering, like, what the hell? This is very bizarre and really didn't fit the profile of their normal serial rapist and murderers. So it was just odd to them. They were wondering if he got physically ill because he was so happy and excited and overcome with what he had done, like that he got physically ill, or did he get physically ill because he was so sick and disgusted with what he had done. Either way, they felt like it was very, very bizarre, to say the least. He waited until it was really dark out and he drove the boat closer to the shore line where she could jump out and swim to shore. Honestly, lucky her, lucky Judy, because, you know, she could have been All right, she could have been, and I'm not even joking. Like, it's not funny. I'm just curious because he is only one man, and for him to overcome 3 women at a time, I can see him overcoming her, but 3 women at a time? Is he Jolly Green Giant? Like, what? How did this happen, you know? At this point in the story, investigators are fairly certain that this guy is the same guy that committed the Rogers family murders. Unfortunately, Judy took a shower before she went to police, so she pretty much washed off all DNA or trace evidence that was left on her. And to be honest with you, I don't know that anything was left on her after the swim from the boat to the shore, just because it was salt water. So even if she hadn't taken a shower, there probably wouldn't have been much DNA evidence left anyway. I'm sorry, my baby is here. Superintendent Lucy is here. She has joined us today. And now she's running away because I said her name. She's going to her desk chair, to her office chair. She's just watching from afar, making sure that we handle this case appropriately. There's cat hair in my eye, by the way. So police brought the victim back in, and they had an artist come in to draw up a composite sketch of the perpetrator. She described him fairly different than Jason Wilcox. She also told them that Jason Wilcox was not the man who had raped her, and he was eliminated as a suspect. He was also eliminated as a suspect in the Roger family's murders as well. So police was now looking for this guy that they had the composite sketch of. They did have Wilcox take a lie detector test, which he passed, as well as he had alibis. So they just completely eliminated him from the entire investigation because this dude obviously did not do it. So the composite sketch that the police released generated hundreds of leads on men, and also the description of the blue and white boat generated a generous amount of leads as well. So police had a lot on their hands. They had close to 800 men called in for this investigation. Like, that's a lot of freaking suspects. You might want to narrow it down. Yeah. Can you imagine having to do all those interviews and eliminate all of these persons of interest that have nothing to do with the case? Now, all of those leads turned out to be dead ends. So investigators got really creative, and they decided to create billboards around the area with samples of what they thought was the killer's handwriting. So pretty much they got the little community of investigators, us now, involved, and you know he was in trouble then. He was about to go down. I feel like whenever the police get in trouble, their best bet is to ask for the public's help. Usually the police don't like to get the community involved because they feel like we F it up, but I'm so happy. I think this was a good idea, and I'm so glad that they dropped their ego and decided to do that. We don't play. We be on a case, we be on a case, baby. We be taking that stuff more seriously than the police. We don't have nothing better to do, just sitting at home with our cats, you know? So time had passed and the police had nothing until a woman named Joan Hardy had passed the billboard on the side of the road, and she recognized the handwriting. I can barely remember people's names, so I for damn sure can't remember anybody's handwriting. So that was impressive. That was, I'm impressed by her. She told police that it looked like the handwriting of a contractor she had hired called Oba Chandler. Now, she said that when she first met Oba Chandler that he appeared to be a very dishonest person, that he wouldn't look her in the eye, and in her own words, she describes him as shifty. Joanne still had some contracts and receipts from the job that Oba Chandler had done on her house. What a freaking superhero. I mean, wow. She went home immediately, grabbed the contracts and the receipts, and brought them back to the police station. Wow, I am so impressed, and hats off to Joanne, because I don't know anybody that could have done that, honestly, that could have even thought to do that. So the forensic handwriting examiner compared the handwriting for Chandler's written receipts to the handwritten notes found in the car, and what do you know? It was a match. The examiner says that her heart immediately started racing because she saw so many of those capital T's throughout his handwriting on the receipt. In everything, there was just capital T's in the middle of every single word that had a T in it, and she was just like, oh my god, this is it, this is the guy, we got him. Now, Oba Chandler was 43 years old. He ran an unlicensed contractor construction business. Around the time police was looking into him, he had about 8 children with 7 different women. But they later learned that he actually had 13 children with 12 different women over the years. So, wow, Mama Palooza. I can't say anything because I'm one of 12, but my parents each had a son, and then they got together and had the 10 of us together. So it wasn't as reckless as what he's doing, but yeah, wow. He was also married, which I don't know if his wife knew about him, but yeah, he was also married. He had a criminal record dating all the way back to high school for sexual assault. I mean, they should have known then that something was up with this kid. Like, hello. His teenage record included 2 sexual assaults, and that's one too effing many, if you ask me. But yeah, he was already starting fresh back then. So investigators were able to get a hold of the ship to shore phone records, and now these phone records are records from boats that are out on the water calling in to the shore, and these are usually recorded. And what do you know? These phone records not only put Oba Chandler out on the water the day of the rape, but also during the time of the Roger family's murders. As you can imagine, police were ecstatic. This was what they were looking for. This was just an outstanding find for them. And of course, Chandler denied his involvement in the murders, but we know he didn't. I haven't worn black lips in a really long time, and I'm so excited. I have to say, I really do love doing alternative makeup looks on here. I know some of you are like, why do you put on so much crazy makeup? It's because in my regular day-to-day life, I am a natural girl. I never, hardly ever wear makeup. So I don't want you guys to think like this is my style, this is what I wear on a day-to-day basis. It's not. These videos give me a safe space to be creative and to play with color. I'm like a 4-year-old child. You give me crayons and a coloring book, do not expect me to stay inside the lines. That's all I can say, okay? I haven't worn a lime crime product in a really long time. Are we good with them? I don't know. I never know. I know something happened back in the day, and I haven't heard from them since. Which is a shame because the name lime crime really does match with true crime. Once police had him in custody, they brought in the one person that could identify him, Judy Blair, the 24-year-old Canadian woman that had been raped by him. So when police showed the victim a photo of Chandler, she immediately identified him as the man who had raped her. They said that she had such a physical reaction to seeing his picture. It was almost as though the girl was definite. She was for sure this was the guy, but she also wanted to be 100% sure. So she asked police to see him in a lineup just so she could be like 100% sure that she wasn't putting some guy away who hadn't done the rape. But she knew it was him. Y'all can say whatever y'all want in the comments. I love me some black lips and some dark lips. So after she went to the physical lineup to see him, she positively ID'd him there. But when investigators went to inspect Chandler's boat, they found out that he had actually sold the boat. obviously to get rid of any potential evidence that could implement him in the murders. Guys, just ignore the eyelash that's falling off. So although they had all of their suspicions about Oba Chandler, the prosecutors knew that in order for them to get their murder conviction, they would need more evidence than just handwriting. So the forensics document examiner was already convinced that the handwriting on the brochure was Oba Chandler's, but investigators were wondering if there was anything else on that brochure, like any other evidence that could possibly link Chandler to the murders. So they decided to expose the brochure to ninhydrin. Ninhydrin is a chemical that reacts with the amino acids found in fingerprint residue. The prints, when in contact with ninhydrin, turns purple, making them a lot more visible to be photographed. Forensic scientists found numerous fingerprints on this brochure, including one palm print. Now, it just so happened that one of the most high quality prints on that brochure was the one palm print. And when investigators compared that palm print to Chandler's palm print, what do you know? The palm print was none other than Oba Chandler's. So now police had more than just circumstantial evidence. They now had a palm print from Chandler. This was huge, massive in solving this case and getting the conviction that the prosecutors wanted. Oba Chandler was charged with 3 counts of kidnapping and first-degree murder. Prosecutors believe that Joan and her 2 daughters met Chandler at a gas station where she asked him for directions to their hotel. This is when he offered Joan and her girls a sunset cruise. The girls probably convinced their mother and talked their mother into taking that cruise. This is when prosecutors believe that Chandler was able to write the directions down on Joan's brochure. That is how the directions, his handwriting, got on the brochure and into her car. She handed him the brochure and he wrote down the directions, leaving behind a trail of his handwriting and his prints. Chandler also gave Joan directions to the boat launch that she wrote down, leaving behind a vital clue, that the boat was blue and white. Another mistake that Chandler made was leaving an electronic trail behind when he called his wife from the ship-to-shore radio to tell her that he was going to be late because he had been having some trouble with his boat. Thanks to forensic science and some great police work, Oba Chandler was convicted of the Rogers family murders and sentenced to death. He was executed by the state of Florida on November 15th, 2011. What do you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. Also, I want to mention, if you guys have any recommendations for alternative makeup palettes or indie brands that I can try, please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, check out my last episode. It will be linked on the screen right here or right here. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week with another Forensic Friday episode. Bye!